My name is Henry, and I was 22 when my life changed forever. After 4 grueling years, I finally earned my engineering degree with honors. Standing in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, I foolishly thought my family might actually be proud of me for once. Instead, my graduation party became a nightmare when my parents demanded I surrender my grandfather's inheritance to my sister. I refused. That's when my dad grabbed my framed diploma, lit it on fire, and said words I'll never forget. If you're watching this story about family betrayal, let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit subscribe, and like if you've ever had to stand your ground against your own family. Let's get into how everything fell apart. I grew up in Oakwood Heights, a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Michigan. Our house wasn't the biggest on the block, but it was comfortable enough for a family of 4. My sister Emma, who's 3 years younger than me, somehow always managed to get the lion's share of everything. Attention, praise, resources, you name it. I still remember my 10th birthday, when my parents promised a small party with a few friends. They ended up canceling it, because Emma had a dance recital that same weekend. "We'll do something special next weekend," my mom said. That special something turned out to be a quick trip to McDonald's. 2 months later, Emma's birthday featured a fully catered backyard party with a bouncy castle and 30 kids from her class. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Emma got new clothes, while I got hand-me-downs from our cousin. She received a brand new laptop for school. I inherited Dad's outdated work computer. When I made honor roll, it was met with a casual good job. When Emma brought home a B-, they took the family out for a celebration dinner. The one person who really saw me, was my grandfather, William. Everyone called him Bill, but to me, he was always Grandpa Will. He was my dad's father, a self-made man who built a successful construction business from scratch after serving in the military. He had this weathered face with deep smile lines and hands that told stories of decades of hard work. Our weekend fishing trips became my sanctuary. Every Saturday morning at 5, he'd pick me up in his old blue Ford truck that smelled like coffee and peppermint. We'd drive to Lake Mitchell with our gear, talking about everything and nothing. "The world doesn't hand you anything, Henry," he'd say as he baited his hook. "You work for what you want, save what you earn, and live by your principles." That's the formula. He'd tell me stories about starting his business with just a toolbox and determination. How he'd worked 18-hour days, taken night classes to learn accounting, and slowly built something substantial. By the time he retired, his company employed over 50 people. Grandpa Will and I shared a passion for understanding how things worked. While my father showed zero interest in my science fair projects, Grandpa would spend hours helping me design and build them. When I decided to pursue engineering in college, he was the first person I told. "Engineers build the future," he said, smiling proudly. "They solve problems others don't even see yet." During my senior year of high school, I applied for every scholarship I could find. I ended up with a partial scholarship to State University, but it only covered about 60% of my tuition. My parents made it clear they wouldn't contribute. They were saving for Emma's education since she had such potential. Grandpa Will stepped in without hesitation. "I'll help with the rest," he told me. "But you'll work part-time and maintain your grades." Deal, we shook on it, and he never missed a payment. Throughout college, I kept my end of the bargain. I maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 20 hours weekly at the campus tech repair center. During summers, I interned at different engineering firms, building my resume and saving what I could. Grandpa came to visit once each semester. We'd go for dinner, and I'd show him my projects. He'd ask detailed questions about my classes and offer practical advice about my future. During my junior year, I landed a prestigious internship at Mercer Engineering. When I called to tell him, I could hear the pride in his voice. "That's how it's done," he said. "You put in the work and doors start opening." Everything changed during the fall semester of my senior year. Grandpa Will was diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months, but he deteriorated much faster than anyone expected. I visited him every weekend at the hospital, often finding him alone. My dad would stop by occasionally, usually just for 15 minutes between other commitments. Mom came even less frequently, always with some excuse about Emma needing her. Emma herself visited maybe 3 times total, spending most of the time on her phone. During those final months, Grandpa and I had many private conversations. Sometimes he'd reminisce about his younger days, but increasingly, he wanted to talk about my future. "I've been watching," he told me one evening, his voice weaker but his eyes still sharp. "I've seen how they treat you compared to your sister. I've seen how you handle it with dignity, without complaint. You remind me of myself at your age." He explained that he'd updated his will after seeing how I'd worked my way through college. "I built everything I have through hard work and smart decisions," he said. "I want my legacy to go to someone who shares those values." I tried to change the subject, uncomfortable talking about his money, but he insisted. "Promise me you'll use what I leave you wisely. Education, investment, building something meaningful. Not frivolous things." I promised, holding his increasingly frail hand. We both knew the promise meant more than just how I'd spend the inheritance. Grandpa will pass away 3 months before my graduation. The funeral was held on a rainy Tuesday. I helped carry his casket, my father on the opposite side, avoiding eye contact with me throughout the service. My mother spent most of the time consoling Emma, who made a show of crying dramatically despite having barely known him. The preliminary will reading happened the following week. I didn't expect much, maybe his fishing gear or some keepsakes. When Mr. Butterfield, his attorney, announced that Grandpa had left me the bulk of his estate, the room fell silent. The inheritance included $750,000 in financial assets, his collection of 3 classic cars, his lake house, and an investment portfolio worth another $400,000. My parents and Emma received significantly smaller portions, each getting $50,000, with an additional $100,000 in a trust for Emma's education. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red. My mother gasped dramatically. Emma shot me a look of pure venom. "There must be some mistake," my father said. "Henry must have manipulated him during his illness." Mr. Butterfield, a dignified man in his 60s, removed his glasses slowly. Bill was of completely sound mind when he made these decisions. He was quite clear about his wishes. That day marked the beginning of a Cold War in our family. My parents barely spoke to me during the 3 months leading up to graduation. Emma alternated between ignoring me completely and making passive-aggressive comments about some people thinking they're special. I focused on finishing my final semester strong, trying to honor Grandpa's memory the best way I knew how. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come. The morning of my graduation dawned bright and clear, May 15th, a perfect spring day. I stood in front of my apartment mirror adjusting my tie, the black graduation gown laid out on my bed. 4 years of all-nighters, group projects, exams, and sacrifices had led to this moment. I should have felt pure elation, but there was an undercurrent of sadness knowing Grandpa wouldn't be there to see me walk across that stage. My phone buzzed with congratulatory texts from friends. My roommate had already left for the ceremony with his parents, who had flown in from Arizona. Then came a text from Tyler, my best friend since freshman orientation. "On my way to pick you up. My parents want pics with their second son before it gets crazy." Tyler's family had practically adopted me over the years. His mom always sent me care packages during finals, and his dad had helped me move apartments twice. They'd been more supportive of my educational journey than my own parents. Speaking of whom, my phone rang at 9:37 a.m. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Henry, we're running late," she said without preamble. "Traffic is terrible. We might miss the beginning of the ceremony." "It starts at 11, I reminded her. "You're leaving now from a 30-minute drive away." "Well, Emma took forever to get ready, and your father had some work emails to handle." "We'll try our best." I swallowed my disappointment. "The graduate lineup is at 10:30. I've reserved seats for you in Section C, rows 4 and 5. Yes, yes, she said distractedly. Oh, Emma needs my help with something. See you there. Tyler arrived 15 minutes later, honking twice from his Honda Civic. His parents insisted on taking photos of us in our caps and gowns in front of my apartment building. We're so proud of you boys, Mrs. Walker said, her eyes misty. First college graduates in both our families. We arrived at the university auditorium with plenty of time. I joined the sea of black gowns in the graduate lineup, exchanging excited greetings with classmates I'd suffered alongside for 4 years. Professor Jenkins, my engineering department advisor, walked down the line checking in with his students. Henry, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Excellent work on your final project. Mercer Engineering has been asking about you. I think they're preparing an offer. Thank you, sir, I replied, genuinely moved. For everything. The ceremony began precisely at 11. I scanned Section C as we filed in. Tyler's parents waved enthusiastically from row 6. Rows 4 and 5, where my family should have been, remained conspicuously empty. Dean Harrington's commencement speech blended into the reading of names. Engineering graduates were called around 30 minutes into the ceremony. Henry James Carter, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, summa cum laude. Walking across that stage felt like floating. I shook hands with the university president, accepted my diploma holder, and moved the tassel on my cap from right to left. In that moment, I thought of Grandpa Will and how proud he would have been. As I looked out into the audience, I saw Tyler and his parents standing and cheering. 3 seats down in the same row, I finally spotted my mother and father, having apparently slipped in late. My mother was looking at her phone. My father offered a half-hearted clap. Emma wasn't with them. After the ceremony, graduates and families flooded the courtyard. Tyler's parents hugged me and insisted on more photos. As we were posing, my family finally appeared. There you are, my mother said, as if I'd been the one who was difficult to find in my bright blue graduation stole among thousands of black gowns. We need to get going if we're going to be ready for the party. My father checked his watch, then his phone. Congratulations, he said, reaching for an awkward handshake instead of a hug. We've got food delivery coming at 3, so we should head back. Emma trailed behind them, eyes rolling when someone congratulated me. Can we stop for coffee on the way? This is so boring, she complained to my mother. We posed for a few stiff family photos that a patient Tyler volunteered to take. My parents insisted we leave immediately after, barely giving me time to say proper goodbyes to professors and classmates. The drive home was quiet. My father talked briefly about traffic. My mother mentioned which relatives would be coming to the house. Emma texted continuously, sighing dramatically every few minutes for attention. When we arrived, I was surprised to see our house actually decorated, balloons tied to the mailbox, a congratulations graduate banner hanging above the front door. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps they did care after all. Inside, my Aunt Patricia, Grandpa Will's sister, was arranging a fruit platter in the kitchen. She rushed over to hug me the moment I walked in. There he is, she exclaimed, holding me at arm's length. Bill would have been busting his buttons with pride today. You know that, right? I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat. Thanks, Aunt Patricia. I have something for you, she said, pulling me aside as my parents busied themselves with last-minute preparations. She handed me a small box. Inside was Grandpa's watch, a vintage Omega Seamaster that he'd worn every day for 40 years. He wanted you to have this, she said quietly. He asked me to give it to you on graduation day. I carefully put it on, the weight of it against my wrist somehow comforting. Guests began arriving around 3:30. A few extended family members, some neighbors, and Tyler with his parents. Emma's boyfriend, Jake, showed up looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled button-down shirt. He gave me a quick congratulatory handshake before gravitating to Emma's side, watching the room with wary eyes as if sensing the underlying tension. The celebration felt hollow. My mother had ordered a generic sheet cake from the local grocery store, with "Congrats, Grad" written in blue icing. My father poured champagne for the adults, raising a brief toast that focused more on family achievements than my specific accomplishment. As I opened a few gifts, mostly cards with checks, a couple of books, I noticed my parents exchanging glances. My mother's smile seemed forced, my father's jaw tense. Emma kept whispering to Jake, both of them glancing at me periodically. Aunt Patricia saved the gathering by standing and sharing stories about Grandpa Will's pride in my academic achievements. He kept every newspaper clipping when Henry made Dean's List, she told everyone. He carried Henry's freshman year photo in his wallet, alongside his military ID until the day he died. My father's expression darkened with each anecdote. He drank his champagne quickly and poured another glass, then another. My mother kept checking her watch, making comments about how we shouldn't keep everyone too late. Emma rolled her eyes whenever attention turned to my accomplishments. As the afternoon wore on, the tension in the room became palpable. Tyler caught my eye across the room, raising his eyebrows in question. I gave a slight shrug. Whatever was brewing, I'd find out soon enough. By 6 o'clock, most of the guests had departed. The neighbors left first, followed by distant cousins and my father's coworker who'd stopped by briefly. I stood at the door thanking people for coming, accepting final congratulations with as much genuine gratitude as I could muster. As I was helping Aunt Patricia find her misplaced purse, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. "Now," my mother whispered urgently. "Yes, now," my father responded, his words slightly slurred from champagne. "Before he has time to leave. Patricia might be a problem, though. She'll side with him. She always does. Then we make her leave first." I pretended I hadn't heard anything, continuing my search until I found Aunt Patricia's purse behind a cushion on the couch. Across the room, Emma and Jake were huddled together, whispering while occasionally glancing in my direction. Jake's expression showed concern, while Emma looked almost smug. "Found it," I announced, handing the purse to Aunt Patricia. "Thank you, dear. Should I be heading out as well? It's getting late." Before I could answer, my father emerged from the kitchen. "Actually, Patricia, we're going to have a family discussion. Would you mind giving us some privacy?" Aunt Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Bill's estate matters. Because I was named executor alongside Martha Butterfield, you know. Perhaps I should stay." My father's face tightened. "This is between us and our son." "Then I'm definitely staying," she replied, sitting firmly on the couch and placing her purse back down beside her. My father looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. "Fine. Tyler, perhaps you'd like to wait outside." Tyler looked at me questioningly. "I'd like Tyler to stay," I said, suddenly certain I'd want a witness for whatever was coming. "This is family business," my mother interjected. "Tyler is like family to me," I replied calmly. "If this concerns what I think it does, I'd like him here." My father's jaw clenched, but he nodded curtly. "Fine. Everyone, living room." Now, we arranged ourselves awkwardly, my parents taking the love seat across from me, Emma perching on the armrest beside them, Jake hovering uncertainly behind her. I sat on the couch with Aunt Patricia beside me. Tyler stood behind us, his presence reassuring. My father cleared his throat and adopted a formal tone I'd rarely heard him use. "Henry, first, congratulations on your graduation. 4 years of hard work, and now you've got your degree. You should be proud." The words were right, but his delivery was all wrong, too rehearsed, too hollow. "Now that this chapter of your life is closing," he continued, "we need to discuss some important family matters. Specifically, your grandfather's estate." My mother jumped in, her voice taking on the sympathetic tone she used when trying to manipulate situations. "Honey, we know Bill left you a significant inheritance. That was his choice, and we've respected that. I doubted that very much, given their behavior since the will reading. However," she continued, "circumstances have changed in our family. Emma has a special situation that your grandfather couldn't have anticipated. Emma straightened up, adopting an expression of earnest sincerity that I recognized from countless childhood incidents when she tried to talk her way out of trouble. I've decided college isn't the right path for me, she announced, as if this were noble news. I've withdrawn from state to pursue a business opportunity. This was the first I'd heard of any withdrawal. Last I knew, she was finishing her freshman year with mediocre grades. What business opportunity? I asked. I'm launching my own brand, she replied vaguely. It's in the influencer space. Very cutting edge. My father jumped in. Emma has connections with several established social media personalities. She needs capital to launch her channel, create content, build her platform. It's a legitimate business venture with excellent potential returns. Grandpa will set aside $100,000 in your education trust, I pointed out. You could use that. Emma scoffed. That's barely enough for quality equipment and a few months of content creation. Besides, it's restricted to educational expenses, so limiting. My mother reached out, placing her hand on my knee in a gesture of false intimacy. Henry, what we're suggesting is simple. Your grandfather didn't understand modern opportunities like Emma's business. He was old-fashioned, thinking a traditional education was the only path to success. He left you money because you were pursuing engineering, my father added. But now you've got your degree. You'll get a good job soon. Emma needs this opportunity now, and she needs the proper funding to make it work. I looked at each of their faces, finally understanding where this was heading. You want me to give my inheritance to Emma? Not all of it, my mother said quickly. Just a significant portion. Family should support each other, Henry. Emma would do the same for you. I highly doubted that. Emma had never willingly shared anything with me in her life. I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. Can I see your business plan, Emma? Financial projections, market analysis, competitive research. Emma blinked. I'm still finalizing those details. So there is no actual business plan yet. It's more of a creative venture, she said defensively. Jake is helping me with the technical aspects. Jake looked distinctly uncomfortable being brought into the conversation. I'd be happy to help you develop a proper business plan, I offered. And if it looks viable, I could consider investing a reasonable amount to help you get started. Investing, my father's voice rose. This isn't about you playing venture capitalist with your sister. This is about sharing what your grandfather should have distributed more fairly in the first place. Grandpa was very specific about his wishes, I said calmly. I promised him I'd use the inheritance for graduate school and eventually starting my own engineering firm. I intend to honor that promise. That's so selfish, Emma snapped. You always were Grandpa's favorite, sucking up to him every chance you got. I visited him every weekend in the hospital, I reminded her. You came 3 times in 6 months. I was busy with school, which you've now dropped out of. My mother's grip on my knee tightened painfully. Henry, if you loved this family, you would help your sister achieve her dreams. Aunt Patricia, who had been silently watching this exchange with increasing discomfort, finally spoke up. Martha and I executed Bill's will according to his explicit instructions. He made his decisions after careful consideration. If he wanted Emma to have additional funds for a business venture, he would have specified that. Stay out of this, Patricia, my father growled. This is between us and our son. I'm just reminding everyone that Bill's wishes were clear, she replied evenly. Tyler shifted behind me, placing a supportive hand briefly on my shoulder. I was grateful for his silent solidarity. I'm sorry, I said, looking directly at my parents. I'm not going to disrespect Grandpa Will's wishes. I'm happy to help Emma in other ways, advice, connections, even a small investment if she develops a solid business plan. But I won't be turning over my inheritance. My father shot to his feet, his face flushing deep red. 4 glasses of champagne had loosened whatever restraint he might normally have shown. You've always been like this, he said, jabbing his finger toward me. Selfish. Thinking you're better than everyone else with your grades and scholarships and special relationship with my father. The bitter emphasis on my father revealed volumes about his own relationship with Grandpa Will. Remember when you refused to let Emma borrow your computer for her school project? He continued, raising his voice. Or when you wouldn't give up your room when her friends came for a sleepover. Both incidents were gross mischaracterizations. I'd offered to help Emma with her project on my computer. She'd wanted to take it to a friend's house where it would likely be damaged. As for the room incident, they demanded I sleep on the couch for 3 nights so Emma and 4 friends could take over my bedroom, despite there being plenty of space in the living room for their sleeping bags. Emma has always been generous, my mother chimed in. Remember how she offered to let you borrow her car when yours broke down? Another fabrication. Emma had offered, only after my parents insisted, and then created so many restrictions that I'd ended up taking the bus instead. My father paced now, working himself into a greater rage. Your grandfather filled your head with nonsense about being self-made. Do you know how much I contributed to his business over the years? My ideas, my connections, my sacrifices. And this is how he repays me, by giving everything to my ungrateful son. The truth was that my father had worked for Grandpa's company for exactly 18 months before quitting to pursue other opportunities, which had resulted in a string of sales jobs with progressively decreasing success. I remained silent, knowing anything I said would only escalate the situation. My father interpreted my silence as defiance, which enraged him further. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the gift table where my newly awarded diploma sat in its presentation folder. I hadn't had time to buy a proper frame yet, but the university provided a nice leatherette holder for the ceremony. He strode over and snatched it up, waving it in front of me. You think this piece of paper makes you special? Makes you deserve my father's money more than the rest of his family. Dad, put that down, I said quietly, standing up. This diploma doesn't make you better than Emma, he continued, ignoring me. It doesn't make you better than me. Emma watched with a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. My mother remained seated, arms crossed, making no move to intervene. Jake looked horrified but remained frozen in place. Aunt Patricia gasped as my father became more agitated. You don't deserve Grandpa's money, he roared, his face contorted with rage. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. My father reached into his pocket and pulled out his lighter, the silver Zippo he'd carried since his brief smoking days in college. With a practiced flick, he produced a flame. Dad, don't, I said, stepping forward. It was too late. He touched the flame to the corner of my diploma, the thick paper catching quickly. When the fire grew, he dropped the burning document into a metal wastebasket nearby. Now you have nothing to show for your 4 years, he snarled, a disturbing satisfaction in his eyes as he watched my diploma burn. The room fell silent except for the sound of crackling paper. Emma's smugness faltered slightly, replaced by surprise at how far things had gone. My mother remained motionless, her expression unreadable. Aunt Patricia shouted, Frank, have you lost your mind? Tyler moved to intervene, but I held up my hand to stop him. Everyone expected me to react, to shout, to fight back, to break down. Instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity wash over me. I smiled. The expression on my face clearly confused everyone in the room, especially my father. His triumphant anger faltered in the face of my unexpected calm. I understand now, I said quietly. Thank you for making things so clear. I walked to the side table where I'd left my phone and keys, gathering them calmly. I turned to Aunt Patricia. Thank you for coming today. And thank you for the watch. It means a lot to me. Henry, where are you going? My mother finally spoke, looking concerned for the first time. I ignored her, nodding to Tyler. Thanks for being here, man. Henry, my father called, his voice less certain now. Get back here. We're not finished discussing this. I paused at the front door, turning back to look at my family one last time. Actually, we are. Completely finished. I walked out, closing the door quietly behind me. Tyler followed immediately. What just happened in there? Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I replied, the strange calm still with me. I finally see everything clearly. You're staying at my place tonight, Tyler insisted. No arguments. I appreciate it, but I'll be fine. I have my apartment through the end of the month. At least let me drive you there. As we walked to his car, I noticed Mr. Jackson, our elderly neighbor, watching from his porch across the street. He nodded to me solemnly, and I knew he'd witnessed enough to understand what had happened. Mr. Jackson had been Grandpa, Will's friend, for over 30 years. I got into Tyler's car, glancing back at the house. Through the front window, I could see my family arguing in the doorway, gesturing wildly. For the first time in years, I felt free of the need for their approval or acceptance. As Tyler drove me away, I ran my thumb over the crystal of Grandpa's watch. Somehow, I knew exactly what he would have said. Now you see, Henry. Now you know what to do. My apartment was a modest one-bedroom near campus that I'd shared with a roommate until he moved out early for a job opportunity in Chicago. It wasn't much, but it was clean, organized, and most importantly, mine. I'd managed to keep it even after Grandpa Will passed away, not touching the inheritance money yet. After saying goodbye to Tyler and assuring him I was really okay, I went inside and locked the door behind me. On my bookshelf sat a cardboard box labeled Grandpa's Things, personal items he'd asked me to keep safe during his final weeks. I opened it now, carefully removing the contents. His dog-eared copy of The Wealth of Nations, a fountain pen he'd used to sign contracts. A small notebook filled with his distinctive handwriting, advice, quotes, and observations he'd collected over decades. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name on it. I hadn't opened it yet. He'd told me to save it for when I really needed his guidance. Tonight seemed like the right time. But first, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old text conversations with Grandpa Will. He'd embraced texting with surprising enthusiasm for a man in his 70s, though his messages were always properly punctuated and never contained emojis. October 17th, 2 years earlier. Proud of your midterm results, Henry. Hard work pays off. Always remember that. December 25th, last year. Merry Christmas. Sorry your parents cut your visit short. Their loss. Dinner at my place tomorrow. I'll make my famous pot roast. Then I found what I was looking for, voice messages from his final months. I played one from 3 weeks before he died. His voice was weaker than his normal robust tone, but still carried the same warmth and wisdom. Henry, I want to talk to you about something important when you visit this weekend. It's about the inheritance and your family. I've seen how Frank and Diana have been acting since they learned about my decisions. Just come prepared for a serious conversation, okay? And maybe don't mention this call to them. The message triggered a vivid memory of that hospital visit. I'd arrived to find Grandpa Will looking more alert than he had in days, sitting up in bed with a legal pad beside him. Close the door, he'd said after our usual greeting. What I'm about to tell you stays between us. I sat in the vinyl chair beside his bed, concerned by his serious tone. They'll come after what I'm leaving you, he said without preamble. Frank has been pressuring me to change my will for weeks. When that didn't work, he started suggesting I was being manipulated or wasn't of sound mind. Dad did that? I'd been shocked but not entirely surprised. Your father has always been envious of others' success instead of creating his own, Grandpa said bluntly. Diana enables it. And Emma, he shook his head sadly. They've taught that girl that she's entitled to whatever she wants without effort. He picked up the legal pad. I've made arrangements to protect you and my legacy. Martha Butterfield has everything in place legally. But I need you to understand something about your family. He looked me directly in the eyes. Some people show their true nature only when money is involved. What you're going to see in the coming months might be painful, but it will be revealing. What should I do? I'd asked. Watch. Listen, document everything, and remember that sometimes the strongest response to toxicity is to walk away. He'd asked me to record our conversation on my phone, saying it might be needed later. I did, feeling uncomfortable but trusting his judgment. One more thing, he'd added. I've asked Jackson from across the street to keep an eye out. He's been my friend since Korea. Former attorney himself. Sharp as they come despite his age. If things get difficult, he can help. Now, sitting in my apartment, I understood his foresight. I opened the sealed envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter and a small key. The letter read, Henry, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and things with the family have likely come to a head. I've watched you grow into a man of integrity, despite the environment you were raised in. That's rare and valuable. The enclosed key opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank, Box 1478. Inside you'll find documents you may need if Frank and Diana challenge the inheritance or try to manipulate you into giving it up. Remember, you earned this through your character and choices. Don't let guilt or obligation make you surrender what you've rightfully inherited. Sometimes the family we're born into isn't worthy of us. Create your own legacy. With pride and love. Grandpa Will. P.S. There are security cameras in your apartment building hallway. If anyone tries to claim you were coerced or manipulated me, that footage might be useful. Mr. Jackson has been recording unusual activities around your place too, just in case. I sat back, stunned by his level of preparation. Looking around, I realized why he'd insisted on helping me move to this particular building last year. It had security cameras in all common areas. The apartment directly faced Mr. Jackson's house, giving him a clear view of anyone coming or going. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. 8 missed calls from my mother. 3 voicemails from my father, likely containing threats or attempts at guilt-tripping. A series of texts from Emma. You're going to regret embarrassing us like this. Dad is furious. Fix this now. You know that money should be shared. Don't be selfish. Last chance before things get ugly. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on the table. Another call came through, Aunt Patricia. I answered that one. Henry, are you safe? Her voice was tight with concern. I'm fine, Aunt Patricia. At my apartment. Your father is talking about contesting the will, claiming you manipulated Bill during his illness. It's nonsense, but I wanted you to be prepared. Grandpa will anticipated this, I told her. He left me some instructions. Smart man, my brother, she paused. I'm disgusted by what happened today. That was your achievement they destroyed, your special day. The diploma was just paper, I said. They can't burn the education or the achievement. You sound just like him, she said softly. Listen, I'm still executor alongside Martha. We'll make sure Bill's wishes are honored. Just take care of yourself, okay? After we hung up, I sent a quick text to Tyler letting him know I was fine and needed some time alone to process everything. Then I called Mr. Jackson. I've been expecting your call, son, his gravelly voice answered. Saw what happened earlier. Been keeping notes like Bill asked me to. Thank you, sir. I might need your help in the coming days. Count on it. Bill was my best friend for 50 years. I'll be damned if I let them dishonor his wishes. The rest of the week passed in a strange limbo. I ignored most calls and messages from my family, responding only to inform them I was safe but needed space. My father's messages grew increasingly threatening, then cajoling, then back to angry. My mother tried emotional manipulation, claiming she was worried sick about me. Emma vacillated between nasty texts and fake apologies. I met with Mr. Jackson for chess in his backyard, just as Grandpa will used to do. The retired attorney helped me prepare for what would likely happen next. They'll try to claim you're not mentally capable of managing the inheritance, he explained, moving his bishop across the board. Or that you exerted undue influence over Bill while he was ill. Both are nearly impossible to prove given the circumstances, but they might try. Should I hire a lawyer? I asked. Martha Butterfield is one of the best estate attorneys in the state. Between her and me, you've got plenty of legal firepower. But document everything, every threat, every attempt at manipulation. Michigan is a one-party consent state for recordings, so save those voicemails. I also had a long conversation with Tyler one evening on his back porch, the kind of deep talk that only happens with true friends. I always knew your family had issues, he said, but burning your diploma. That's next level. The strange thing is, I'm not even that upset about it anymore, I admitted. It's like it finally freed me from hoping they'd change. What will you do with the inheritance? Exactly what I promised Grandpa. Invest most of it, use some for grad school, eventually start my own firm. Live modestly and build something meaningful. Your grandfather would be proud, Tyler said, raising his beer bottle in a toast. To honoring promises. To honoring promises, I echoed, feeling a sense of peace despite the storm I knew was coming. By the end of the week, I received a formal email from Martha Butterfield's office. My parents had requested a meeting regarding the estate. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. I was ready. The Butterfield and Associates building stood 14 stories tall in the downtown business district, its glass and steel exterior reflecting the morning sunlight. I arrived 20 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal suit that Grandpa had helped me pick out for internship interviews. The receptionist directed me to the conference room on the 11th floor. Martha Butterfield was already there, reviewing documents with her assistant. In her mid-60s with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, she had the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing. Henry, she greeted me with a firm handshake. How are you holding up? Better than expected, Ms. Butterfield. Call me Martha, please. Your grandfather was a dear friend as well as a client. She gestured to the chair beside her. We've prepared for various scenarios today. Mr. Jackson briefed me on recent events. The conference room was impressive, mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. Documents were arranged in precise stacks before each seat, with water carafes and glasses at intervals. At precisely 10 o'clock, the receptionist showed in my parents, Emma trailing behind them. My father wore his only suit, the navy one reserved for weddings and funerals. My mother had dressed formally as well, her expression a practiced mask of maternal concern. Emma looked sullen in business casual attire that seemed hastily assembled. Their confident expressions faltered slightly when they spotted me already seated beside Martha, but my father quickly recovered, approaching with his hand extended toward the attorney. Frank Carter, he introduced himself unnecessarily. Thank you for arranging this meeting on such short notice. Martha shook his hand briefly. Please, everyone, have a seat. We have several matters to discuss. My parents and Emma sat across from us, exchanging glances that suggested they believed they had the upper hand. My father placed a folder on the table with a small flourish. Before we begin, he said, we have serious concerns about Henry's mental state and his influence over my father during his final months. Martha raised an eyebrow. Oh, my son has been exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior, my mother jumped in, her voice dripping with false worry. We believe he may have taken advantage of Bill's weakened condition to manipulate the terms of the will. Emma nodded eagerly. Grandpa always said he would help with my business aspirations. Henry must have convinced him otherwise when he was too sick to think clearly. I remained silent, following Martha's earlier advice to let them talk themselves into a corner. I see, Martha said neutrally. And what evidence do you have of this alleged manipulation? My father opened his folder, pulling out several papers. We have documented instances of Henry restricting our access to my father in the hospital, and statements from family members about promises Bill had made regarding equitable distribution of his estate. Martha accepted the papers, glancing at them briefly before setting them aside. I understand you're upset about the distribution of assets. That's natural. However, I want to be very clear about something before we continue. She opened her leather portfolio. I worked with William Carter for over 20 years. In that time, I came to know him as a meticulous, thoughtful man who carefully considered every decision, particularly where his legacy was concerned. She removed her reading glasses, looking directly at my father. The will we're discussing today wasn't drafted in his final months. The core provisions regarding Henry's inheritance were established 4 years ago, when Bill was in excellent health. He made minor adjustments over time, but his intentions remained consistent. My father's confident expression wavered. "We weren't informed of this." "There was no legal requirement to inform you of Bill's estate planning," Martha replied. "Now, shall we review the actual provisions of the will as executed?" Without waiting for a response, she began reading the key sections. The distribution was exactly as had been preliminarily discussed after the funeral, the bulk of the estate to me, with smaller portions to my parents and Emma. "As you can see," Martha continued, "everything is in order legally. Bill was evaluated by 2 separate physicians who certified his mental competence at the time of the final will signing, specifically to prevent challenges such as the one you're attempting." My father leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Regardless of when the will was drafted, Henry has been behaving irresponsibly. He walked out of a family discussion about sharing resources. He's demonstrating that he's not mature enough to manage this inheritance." "That family discussion involved you burning my diploma," I finally spoke, keeping my voice even. "That's a complete exaggeration," my mother protested. Martha held up her hand. "Actually, I believe we should address the special provision in William's will that hasn't yet been discussed." She turned to a tabbed section in her binder. "William added this clause approximately 8 months ago. Let me read it verbatim. Having observed certain patterns of behavior within my family, I add the following condition. Any attempt to coerce, threaten, or manipulate Henry regarding this inheritance will result in immediate forfeiture of any residual benefits to other family members. This includes but is not limited to threats, emotional manipulation, false claims of financial emergency, or attempts to contest this will without substantial legitimate basis." My parents' faces drained of color simultaneously. Emma's mouth opened in shock. "This is outrageous," my father sputtered. "You can't possibly enforce such a vindictive clause." "Actually, we can," Martha replied calmly. "It's called an interim clause, and it's perfectly legal in Michigan. Furthermore, William instructed me to gather evidence of any such attempts at coercion, should they occur." She pressed a button on the conference phone. "Teresa, please bring in the evidence package." Her assistant entered with a USB drive and a thick folder. Martha connected the drive to a laptop, turning the screen to face everyone. "This is security footage from Henry's apartment building from the past 3 months, she explained, playing a video showing my father pounding on my door, clearly agitated on multiple occasions. "And this," she continued, "is from the graduation party 4 days ago." The video, apparently taken from a security camera at the neighbor's house, clearly showed through my parents' front window the confrontation that led to my diploma being burned. The footage was remarkably clear, capturing my father's rage and my calm departure. "We also have these," Martha said, playing audio recordings of threatening voicemails from my father and manipulative messages from my mother. She then displayed screenshots of Emma's text messages. "Mr. Jackson, your father's longtime friend and a retired attorney, has provided a sworn affidavit regarding his observations," Martha added, pulling out another document. "And we have this." She played the recording I'd made in the hospital room, where Grandpa will explicitly discuss his concerns about potential manipulation after his death. The room fell silent as the recording ended. My parents and Emma stared in disbelief. "In light of this evidence," Martha continued professionally, "and under the terms of the interim clause, I'm obligated to inform you that you have triggered the forfeiture provision. The $50,000 designated for each of you, Frank and Diana Carter, is now revoked. The educational trust of $100,000 for Emma Carter is similarly revoked. Furthermore, your secondary inheritance rights to the lake house property in case Henry chose to sell it are terminated. You can't do this, my father shouted, rising to his feet. It's already done, Martha replied evenly. William anticipated this reaction and prepared accordingly. All assets in question will be transferred to the charitable foundation he established as the contingent beneficiary. Emma burst into tears, real ones this time, not the performative crying she'd perfected growing up. But my business. I needed that money. Your business that has no business plan? I asked quietly. My mother turned to me, suddenly desperate. Henry, you can stop this. Tell Ms. Butterfield you don't want to enforce this clause. We're still your parents. Parents who burned my diploma and called me selfish for honoring my grandfather's wishes, I replied. I didn't want this outcome, but Grandpa Will was right about what would happen. My father's face contorted with rage. He lunged across the table toward me. You manipulative little. Martha's assistant had apparently anticipated this reaction, as security personnel appeared at the door immediately. I believe this meeting is concluded, Martha stated firmly. Frank, Diana, Emma, I suggest you leave now before we need to involve law enforcement. And be aware that any further attempts at harassment, coercion, or legal action without substantial basis will result in potential legal consequences beyond the forfeiture clause. As security escorted my family out, my father's parting words echoed in the conference room. This isn't over. You'll regret this, Henry. When the door closed behind them, I exhaled slowly, feeling an odd mixture of relief and sadness. Martha placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. Your grandfather predicted almost exactly how this would unfold. He wanted to protect you from exactly this kind of behavior. I never wanted their portions revoked, I admitted. I just wanted them to respect his wishes and my boundaries. I know, she said kindly. That's why Bill valued you so much. But sometimes the most important boundaries are the ones that hurt to enforce. She gathered her documents, closing her portfolio. The good news is that everything is now legally settled. The inheritance will transfer to you without further impediments. And if they continue to harass you, we have legal remedies available. As I stood to leave, Martha handed me one more envelope. Your grandfather asked me to give you this after the confrontation he knew would come. It's the deed to his lake house and the keys to his car collection. He wanted you to have a place of peace while you build your future. I accepted the envelope, feeling the weight of both the inheritance and the knowledge of what it had cost. Not the money itself, but the final severance of my family ties. As painful as it was, I knew Grandpa Will had given me something far more valuable than assets. He'd given me the truth and the freedom that came with it. The weeks following the confrontation at Martha's office revealed just how precarious my parents' financial situation had been. Rumors spread through family connections that they had accumulated significant debt, counting on the inheritance to bail them out. Emma's business plan was exposed as nothing more than an expensive attempt to become a social media personality, with no strategy beyond buying followers and expensive equipment. Without the inheritance they'd been counting on, my parents were forced to downsize, selling their house and moving to a smaller home in a less prestigious neighborhood. Emma moved in with Jake temporarily before their relationship collapsed under the financial strain. Aunt Patricia remained steadfast, calling regularly to check on me and maintaining our relationship despite pressure from my parents to choose sides. Family doesn't manipulate and threaten each other, she told me during Sunday brunch 1 month after the confrontation. Bill would be proud of how you've handled this. After completing the legal transfers and ensuring everything was properly settled, I made a significant decision. Using a small portion of the inheritance, I put a down payment on a modest home in Minneapolis, where Mercer Engineering had offered me a position in their innovative design division. The move put 300 miles between me and the toxic family dynamics I'd endured for 22 years. The lake house that Grandpa Will had left me became my weekend retreat, a place to fish, think, and remember him. I kept one of his classic cars, a 1967 Mustang that we'd worked on together during my high school years, and sold the others to establish a more diversified investment portfolio based on his conservative principles. 6 months after graduation, I received an unexpected email from Emma. Unlike her previous messages, this one seemed genuinely reflective. "Henry, I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened. Moving back home with Mom and Dad has been eye-opening. I'm seeing how they manipulate situations, how they pit people against each other. I think I've been copying their behavior my whole life without realizing it. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness right now. I just wanted to say I understand better why Grandpa left things the way he did and why you stood your ground. I've enrolled in community college and am working part-time at a marketing firm. Trying to build something real this time. Maybe someday we could talk." "Emma," I responded cautiously but optimistically, suggesting we take small steps toward rebuilding some kind of relationship. Over the next year, we occasionally exchanged messages and eventually met for coffee when I was in town visiting Aunt Patricia. Emma had indeed changed, humbled by circumstances, but also genuinely maturing. Our relationship would never be close, but at least it was no longer toxic. My parents were a different story. They made several attempts to reconnect, but each one came with subtle or not-so-subtle hints about financial, family support, or how they were struggling while I lived in luxury. I maintained firm boundaries, making it clear that any relationship would need to be based on mutual respect, not financial expectations. When they couldn't or wouldn't accept those terms, I limited contact to brief, civil interactions at family events. The healing process wasn't linear. There were nights I lay awake questioning whether I'd done the right thing, wondering if there had been another path that wouldn't have resulted in such a complete family fracture. Therapy helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for my parents' choices or their financial situation. I hadn't burned bridges. I had simply stopped trying to rebuild ones they kept destroying. Tyler remained my closest friend, visiting often and eventually taking a job at a tech firm near Minneapolis. "Your grandfather didn't just leave you money," he observed during one of our fishing trips at the lake house. "He left you a blueprint for living with integrity." Professor Jenkins, my engineering mentor, became another important part of my chosen family. He helped me navigate graduate school applications and eventually became a partner in the small engineering firm I established 3 years after graduation, Carter Innovative Solutions. Perhaps the most healing activity was the scholarship fund I established in Grandpa Will's name. Each year, it provided tuition assistance to 3 engineering students who demonstrated academic excellence despite challenging family circumstances. Watching those students thrive gave purpose to the inheritance beyond my personal benefit. I also started a tradition of hosting annual fishing retreats for teens from difficult backgrounds, teaching them the same patience, strategy, and contemplative skills that Grandpa Will had taught me on our weekend trips. During these retreats, I would often share parts of my story, helping them understand that family difficulties didn't have to define their futures. As I restored Grandpa's Mustang over weekends, I found myself having imaginary conversations with him in the garage, seeking his advice on business decisions or personal challenges. In those quiet moments, surrounded by his tools and the smell of motor oil, I felt his presence most strongly. 5 years after that fateful graduation day, I sat on the dock at the lake house, watching the sunset reflect on the water. In my hand was my journal, another habit inherited from Grandpa Will, where I'd been reflecting on the journey. The real inheritance hadn't been the money or property. It had been the values he instilled. Integrity, self-reliance, generosity toward those who earned trust, and firm boundaries against those who repeatedly broke it. The inheritance was learning when to stand firm and when to walk away. It was understanding that family isn't just about blood, it's about mutual respect and support. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been right. By honoring my promise to Grandpa Will, I'd not only preserved his financial legacy, but built something more valuable, a life of purpose and principle that would make him proud. As the last light faded from the sky, I closed my journal with a sense of peace. My grandfather had prepared me not just for the inheritance, but for the challenges that would come with it. In doing so, he'd given me the tools to build a life that honored his memory far better than simply preserving his money ever could. Has your family ever tested your boundaries over money or inheritance? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and like this video so others can learn from these difficult life lessons too. Remember, sometimes the most important inheritance isn't money, it's the wisdom to use it well. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own family challenges.